3, 2, 1.
Good afternoon and welcome to the New Jersey Herald's Vernon mayoral candidates debate. I'm Rob Jennings. I'll be the moderator today. I want to say special thanks to our friends at Sussex County Community College for providing the space and for EDTV 20 Studio for accommodating this production. This will be available on their station after this airs and also on our website, www.njherald.com. And we want to introduce the candidates who are kind enough to join us today. We have Vernon Mayor Vic Marotta, in office since 2011. He is seeking his second term. He's a former freeholder and he was a mayor back in the 1980s. Good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And we have Gary Martinsen. Gary is manager of the Nordic House. He's a frequent visitor at the council meetings, often asks questions at the meetings and the Environmental Commission meetings and others. Gary, it's great to have you here.
Thank you very much.
And not here today is Harry Shortway. He's a former deputy mayor. Mr. Shortway has indicated that he does not want to participate in any candidate forums. There was a candidate forum last night hosted by the Vernon Historical Society. Mayor Marotta was there, Mr. Martinsen was not. This is the one that we are hosting, and we're certainly glad to have both of you here. Now, the format here is kind of envisioned as more of a questioning, kind of a conversational type approach, so no time limits, just kind of discuss amongst yourselves, and we'll kind of take it from there. So if you're ready, we'll get going.
I'm ready.
Okay.
One thing to kind of lead into the first question for viewers not super familiar with Vernon, it is the largest municipality in Sussex County, both in population and land mass. About 5 years ago, voters changed the form of government to a directly elected mayor with full responsibility, and ever since then, there's been a debate over whether the mayor should be full-time or part-time, what the mayor should be paid or not paid. There's a ballot question this fall that would raise the mayor's salary by $6,000. He currently gets $30,000. And I wanted to ask both of you, since this issue has dominated so much of the discussion, taking the individuals out of the position, regardless of who the mayor is this a full-time job or a part-time job? And what should the appropriate salary be? And I'll let either of you decide to start off.
Go ahead.
I don't consider it a job. It's an elected official position. And according to the law, it doesn't have a salary. A job, if you look in the code, there is no job description. There is no hours. There are no hours. There are responsibilities. And a person could do them in 10 hours. It could take another person 100 hours. So as a job, I don't see that. I think the responsibility is technically 24/7, 365 days a year. You will be on call. I mean, that's the nature of the beast, or the nature of the love, whichever. I don't think a salary increase is needed. I don't think that's should be part of the situation, and I don't think it should be part of the reason for voting for someone either.
Yes, Mayor?
Sure. Obviously, I have a very different opinion of it, so if I may, whether it's full-time or part-time really is not up to the mayor. In the form of government we have, it's a decision made by the council. And to be very frank, the responsibilities that Gary speaks about are, in fact, serious responsibilities. There is a job description, it's very clear. The mayor is the CEO of the township by statute. And further, that means that the mayor must negotiate all contracts on behalf of the township, whether it be with employees, whether it be with developers, whether it be any contractual relationship rests with the mayor, and upon the completion of that, present it to the council for their approval. It's the same thing with appointments in terms of our boards and commissions, except for the MUA, which is a council appointment. All the other appointments are mayor nominated and with advising consent of the council. This form of government is really patterned after both the state legislature and the federal government. I am not a member of the council. I do not report to them, and I am not responsible for doing what they say to do unless they pass it in the form of a law or a resolution over which both, by law, I have veto power. I've never used that while I've been the mayor because, frankly, we've always been able to talk to each other and work things out and get to a conclusion that served all the people. However, the issue of is it a job? Well, thanks to the former mayor who took Vernon to court, Judge Wiesenbach was very clear in his decision. Not only is it a job, the job I'm doing is a full-time mayor, and it was declared so by a Superior Court judgment. In terms of the cost, we were paying managers in the manager council form of government in Vernon Township anywhere from $125,000 to $155,000 a year in that form of government. And one of the reasons why it was changed was most of those people who came to us with great credentials didn't know the names of the streets, much less the names of the people. And what we got from that form of government was increased taxes, decreased services, and absolutely a cutting of the ability of the township government to perform its responsibilities in police and in roads.
I can ask a follow-up question on that. So are you envisioning the mayor as kind of almost a hybrid then, as a mayor/business administrator? What's the overall view of how the administrative structure would then work?
There's been a lot of talk about the business administrator, and we have one of those, and therefore why is the mayor doing what he's doing? The business administrator's job description is very clear. It is, in fact, to manage the business. What does that mean? It means contracting. It means communicating with vendors. It means anything having to do with the carrying on of the business. But the final decision and the final authority under this form of government rests in the mayor's office.
And both of you, when you describe it, I mean, Mr. Martinsen, you've talked about it being, you're kind of on call 24/7. From what you're describing, it's a voluminous responsibility. I mean, the implication is almost that 30K is too low when I hear that. I mean, but you've said 30K is what it should be.
Yeah, and to counter the mayor, this form of government with this type of responsibility, a mayor in this form of government in other towns is not a full-time mayor. It doesn't say full-time in our code. It doesn't say full-time in the state code. It is, there's other towns where the towns are bigger, the budget is bigger, and the mayor is getting $8,000, $6,000, you know, so significantly less.
And someone else is being paid $150,000 to do the same
Possibly,
thing
but that doesn't mean that the mayor should be paid more just because, you know,
That's your
other
opinion.
jobs, other towns, the mayors have other jobs. They do other things. You don't have to, but
Then I guess my question
if
is,
they can do that,
how does this ever get
resolved?
resolved, though? Is this going to be a perpetual debate that happens every year at every reorganization meeting, or how do you settle this issue in terms of what do we want out of the mayor, what does this position merit being paid, and what sort of responsibilities? How do you settle this?
I contend that it's been settled, and it's been settled by the law. The law says that the council determines shall the mayor be full-time or part-time.
And right now, our law doesn't say that.
And the statute does, the state law. And in New Jersey, it certainly does. I beg to differ with you. In New Jersey, okay, ordinances are only as valid, ordinances passed by a township are only as valid as the statutes. If a court situation comes about and the ordinance comes into conflict with the statute, the state courts will always rule in favor of the statute. That's a fact.
I've looked at the code. There's nothing in there about full-time, part-time.
So Mayor, then, what do you feel then is the appropriate compensation for this position, separate from you being in the job, but just for this position as the responsibilities as you see it?
Having spent the last 4 years doing the things that I've referred to, hiring, negotiating contracts with the unions, negotiating contracts with developers, negotiating contracts with vendors, okay, I can tell you, without a knowledge of that kind of activity, either from business or from public life, someone would have to depend on another person to do it. And so, if you think about what Gary is saying at this point in time, if you have a part-time mayor, whether he gets paid $30,000 or gets paid nothing, okay, that person is going to have to depend on a professional. What that really says is Vernon Township, under that scenario, would return to what we had before. A paid, hired professional from probably outside the township making the critical decisions and negotiations on behalf of the town. Mm-hmm. What's different in this form of government is an elected mayor who is the CEO, who manages the town business, and that's what I do, okay, has skin in the game. Mm-hmm. I'll live in Vernon, and I have to walk around Vernon, and I have to, in fact, face the people when I make a decision, and I do it. That didn't happen with the managers we had. It did not happen. I lived through it. You could call town hall, and I'm not picking out any one of the 11 managers we had over the council form. We had 11 years of councils. We had 11 administrators or managers in that time. Not one of them Not one of them returned phone calls, okay? I'll tell you this, and you heard me say it last night. I have handled well in excess of 15,000 phone calls, and I tell you, because I keep records, less than 5% of them I have not been able to return. We never got that service from a manager.
I guess we can certainly move on from this interesting discussion. I mean, I guess you disagree a little bit. Certainly when you say you envision it as like a CEO, there's an implication that it's more than 30K, ideally.
It says it's the CEO.
Yeah. Okay. And one thing that is gotten less attention in this race, but is relevant. I mean, if one is the mayor but doesn't have support of the majority of the council, it's in some ways a Pyrrhic victory because of the amount of control they have over many aspects of the budget and everything else. Right now there's a 3-2 split. There's 2 seats up for election, and this could swing control of the council. So I was curious, both of you, have you made endorsements in this race? Who are you supporting and why? Mr. Mayor?
You want to go?
How about
first last time?
Yeah,
we'll
take turns on that.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
Mr. Mayor.
No,
Yeah.
I haven't actively endorsed anyone, but to be frank with you, I definitely have a preference, and that being Ed Snook and Ed Nitsch. And there's a very simple reason, and I'll speak to it. Ed Snook has been a lifelong resident of Vernon Township. As a matter of fact, when I was on the town committee and the mayor in the 80s, Ed Snook was made the director of the DPW. He is living history, very, very valuable to our government as we move forward in capital projects because, and I'll give you an excellent example. We started yesterday to reconstruct Lake Wallkill Road. And we started at the Lake Wallkill entrance going north on the road with a reclamation machine that just took everything up, chewed it all up, put it back down, and compacted it as a sub-base. About a quarter of a mile north of Lake Wallkill Road, there's a concrete culvert that goes under the road. And you know what? Nobody knew it was there, except Ed Snook. And one day when we were doing the planning and the discussion, Ed stopped in my office. He said, Vic, he said, that reclamation machine, if you let it run over that concrete culvert, you're going to destroy the machine and you're going to have problems. It's just one example, but that kind of living knowledge of our storm sewers, our roads, how long has it been since the road has been reworked? Ed has all of that knowledge. He has all of the knowledge of the working of the DPW and was a successful supervisor there, director there. And beyond that, he comes from a family who has served Vernon for 3 generations. His father was a mayor, and I believe his grandfather before him was involved in Vernon Township many, many years ago.
Okay. So, Mr. Martinsen, where do you come down on this?
I don't feel it's good to endorse anybody, partly because when I'm elected, I'm going to have to work with them, and I don't want it to seem like I was preferential to somebody. I was very disappointed that we didn't have, or we don't have, and there's still another week, a candidates forum and or debate, so that I could have learned more about the ones that we have. I think from what I've seen, Mr. Kadish has the best interest of the town at heart, so that's one thing I've seen. But for the other 3 candidates, I have not seen them. Well, I've seen Ms. Ohms and Mr. Nitsch got up at the last council meeting, but I don't have a good knowledge of them.
So it seems as though you're at least sort of endorsing Councilman Kadish.
I've had arguments with him too.
Yeah, okay. Because I mean, if the mayor's choices win, I mean, he will have a 4-to-1 edge on that council, which would give the mayor, and assuming he's reelected, of course. I mean, on the other hand, if you're elected, and that you could be in a minority position as mayor. So it seems like it has a lot of impact on your job as mayor who is elected on the council.
It does. In fact, right now with the 3-2 split, you still have the option to, for certain things, financial, to be decided by the council. But when you get to a 4, you're going to have to send it back. Then you need a supermajority, which is 4. So if the mayor has a supermajority, then they really can control quite a bit.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to respond to that if I can. Because the fact of the matter is elections have consequences. And I think that's one of the things that may have been being missed in all of this. In 2011, when I ran, I was very clear about what my platform was and what I planned to do, and I did it. And I did it because I had the support of the council at that time. We worked together. Whether it was 3-2, 4-1, I had the support of the council. I have to come back and say this. I've never had an argument with Dan Kadish, frankly, because he doesn't speak to me at any time other than in a public meeting. That's his loss.
I disagree.
Well, it's his loss. The fact of the matter is that claims of transparency actually have no merit whatsoever. There's never been a more transparent administration in Vernon's entire history. Everything that we have done since the day I walked in has been Oprah'd by the VTA and their members and the people who are politically adversarial of mine. And what did it all come down to? What did it all come down to? We spent a lot of legal fees defending lawsuits that were never won by those people.
But what does that have to do with endorsement?
It has to do with a lot of things, because if a councilman...
Yeah, but the question was on endorsement.
If a councilman doesn't prepare, okay, doesn't prepare for a meeting and finds himself asking questions about things that really, had he read his packet or had he talked to the mayor or had he done something more, I take that as having the township's best interest at heart. Listen, Dan Kadish is a fine man. That's not what I'm saying. But to be frank with you, his participation is as scripted as all the rest of them.
So the other 4 are scripted too?
I don't think so.
Well, you just said that.
No, I meant the rest of the VTA people.
Oh, sorry, I don't know who VTA people are.
You don't know? They used to hold their meetings at your place.
That was a long time ago.
I
That
see.
was before the change of government, before you came in.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, maybe to move on to a different topic, I think one thing which is very interesting about this particular office is that, in a way, it is a bully pulpit. In terms of, you can put issues out there that may not necessarily be directly under your control, but you can start a debate and have a discussion. And when I'm out in Vernon, there's a lot of talk about the school closing issue. Now, often members of the council have said, well, this is technically not something we can decide, which is literally true. But I was curious, in terms of what, as mayor, if reelected or elected in office, what would be your recommendation on this issue?
On closing the schools?
Well, there's a discussion about closing a school in light of the declining population, which would have a significant impact a number of levels in Vernon.
True. They're based on the fact that we do have a declining population. It's been proven over and over again, and the status is that it's going to continue to decline, not just in Vernon, but in other areas too, because of the childbirths and just the nature of the beast for America. I think that just because the school is separate doesn't mean we can't work with them. Mm-hmm. And in fact, a lot of our money goes into the schools, and so we should be utilizing some of that. And I think there's things we can do. For instance, we had a, well, Service Electric is one, to have money going into the schools and have your own studio at the high school. There is the Paya web design. We could have the schools being done by the students. In fact, when the EDAC came up with a web design, or was going to have a web design done, and we actually provided the web service for free, a high school student was assigned, and I helped a high school student and work with that. So
I just want to clarify on that one point you're raising there, because these numbers have been out there for several years now, these trend lines. I mean, so if you're in there as mayor January 1st and this issue comes up and somebody goes to a council meeting and says, well, what do you think about this? Should a school close, yes or no? How do you answer that?
I think there's other options that can be done, but until you look at, can the administration be reduced? Will the teachers take salary cuts? Can you do anything else to reduce it? We're currently, at least, have millions, more than $10 million over any of the other schools in our district. We're getting from the state over $25 million. That may dry up, and you can't keep on going with the schools we have if you dry that up. I think one of the options that people are talking about is getting more people into town and more kids back in the school. I don't think that's going to happen. So possible utilization of a school for something else temporarily, and then if the kids come back, or you get the population to fill in, then you technically haven't closed it, you've just utilized it and gotten some money from it.
Okay. Mayor?
You're absolutely right. The mayor's office is a bloody pulpit. And being the elected by the people to lead the community, one of the things that I've been very vocal about is we needed to start the discussion as to what Vernon was going to do with the problem that you just alluded to, Gary, because it's not that that money may go away. In 2012, the Board of Education of Vernon Township, and I might add, it was my administration and council that established a liaison committee that works with a Board of Education liaison committee on all issues where the two interface, shared services, funding, all of them. And in those early meetings, we being the liaison from the township, which was myself, Councilman Rizzuto and Councilman Lynch, we were told point blank by John Alfieri, who was then the superintendent, that we had been notified in Vernon that because we in Vernon had been being paid state aid at a rate much higher than the actual population count, we could expect a $1.7 million reduction in state aid for the next 5 consecutive years. Now in 2013, in fact, or 12, excuse me, in fact, that 1.7 million ended up being about 1.5 million in reduction. With a $70 million budget, which is what the Board of Education operates on, there was plenty enough room in their budget to absorb that $1.7 million decrease. The following year, it didn't happen for a very simple reason, and that was Governor Christie was running for re-election, and Vernon got an $863,000 increase from the year before. However, I just came from a meeting with the 24th District legislators in which Senator Oraho told all of the elected officials that were there that we in Sussex County, he wasn't speaking only about Vernon, but we in Sussex County can expect fully to see funding for education cut even further as we go down the road. If that happens, there's only one way to make up that lost money, and that's to put it on the property tax of the people. If you do your math, 1.7 times 5 years is just about $10 million. A tax point in Vernon is $265,000. You realize, of course, to try to make up that $10 million in property tax would put us all out of our homes. I have faith in Dr. DiBenedetto. And the reason I do is this. He immediately, upon taking the responsibility, did the analysis and said clearly the Vernon Township Board of Education must do something about this. Let's start the conversation. And that's what's happened.
At one point, though, just to follow up on that, I mean, this discussion has been going on for, 5 years, if not longer. There's been study committees formed, there's been a lot of presentations, and everybody kind of agrees on the numbers and all of that. Do you have a specific position, though, at this point? Do you feel that a school will have to close? Do either of you have a specific position at this point?
I wouldn't call mine a position. My observation is, and if I was listening to Gary closely, it seems that he shares this one to a certain degree, we have to do something. And can we make up $10 million without closing the school and consolidating? That's the Board of Education's decision. My job as the mayor was to engender that conversation. I had an opportunity on my radio show in Warwick to sit one morning and speak with the former president of the school board in Warwick, who went through this same exercise about 2 years ago and closed a school in Pine Island, and they closed one in Warwick properly. The school in Warwick is now being rented by one of the Christian churches for its own private school and its church. And instead of taking $1 or $2 million a year out of the budget in Warwick, it's now contributing $400,000 a year in rent.
That's what I was alluding to.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. If the school is closed, I don't think, in my mind at least, that means we have to sell it. As a matter of fact, I think it would be wise not to do that.
So at this point, neither of you have a definitive position, yes or no, on whether this would happen.
In my opinion, the process is going forward, okay? Let the process work. There's a Board of Education election going on, and it's interesting to me, nobody's talking about it.
And not to get too off topic, but your observation about how the funding went up when the governor was running for re-election was kind of interesting, but that's maybe a whole separate debate.
It's fact.
Yeah.
Let me add one more thing. One of the things that we can do also is we recently had the 30-year bond put through. And when I went and I looked at all of the growth in Pennsylvania for water parks and stuff like that, theirs are 20 years. But what we did, or what we're suggesting we did, was only to take 1.5 million and cut the schools we're not getting. We could allow that a large portion goes to the schools, that would help.
Not
yes,
so.
We can.
First of all,
I
have to correct
the towns that I looked at, they had 1/3. In fact, before you did the 30-year bond, You had the schools vote on it and decide on it.
We
you
have
had
never
the township vote and
done
decide
a
on it, and you had the
30-year
county decide on it.
Are you done?
No, well, it's kind of hard since you keep interrupting me.
Because your information is incorrect.
Well, that
Vernon
you can allow me to
Township-
finish, and then maybe you can see whether it is or not.
Go right ahead.
Okay. We have the ordinance that could allow it. Okay. During those presentations, it was presented that what the developers would like to see is the 1.5 million coming in, which 30 years from now is going to be nothing. When I looked at what was being done at the Great Wolf and the others for what they did, they only did 20 years. And part of it was, and what they have in Pennsylvania is, it's 3 prongs. Mm-hmm. The township doesn't just decide. The schools, because it could be money for them, has to decide. The county, because it could be money for them, has to decide.
Okay. Maybe, Mayor, if you could respond to that, and then we'll move on to a different topic.
I'd like to.
Yeah.
One, Vernon Township never floated a bond. Vernon Township took the action of creating an enabling ordinance that would have allowed that to happen had the project gone forward. The reason the project didn't go forward was very simple. As I negotiated with the developers, I made it clear to them that Vernon Township would not underwrite 1 penny until they came up with their full $120 million funding, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, let's talk about the actual facts. The piece of property that was in question is a piece of property that generated just over $16,000 a year total to Vernon Township, the school, and the county. Now, you just said the school wouldn't get anything. That's not true. The school
Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise what? The school would have gone from $6,300 in property tax to $189,000 in pilot program. So would the county of. And thirdly, while you quote Pennsylvania, we are in New Jersey, and we have to follow New Jersey law, and New Jersey law doesn't allow for that. Whether it was a 20-year or a 30-year bond really is moot, okay? The answer is very simple.
Not a bond ordinance.
The answer is very simple, okay? It's the one redevelopment zone that Vernon has, and at some point in time, someone's going to come forward, I'm sure, and look to do something there that will engender the redevelopment laws as they exist in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. Until that time happens, this entire discussion really is moot.
Yeah, and that was definitely a great exchange, and that could be also a whole debate unto itself. Yeah. And I appreciate you both exploring
last
it. Yeah, one just briefly, please.
Okay, the 30-year is an ordinance. It's not a bond.
Okay.
And it doesn't apply just to that property. It's universal, so anybody else could use it.
And one
That's
thing
incorrect.
Written.
That is incorrect. It is not the way it was written, and I would just simply suggest to you that you need to go back and reread it and get somebody who understands it to explain it to you.
Okay, so on that point, we'll definitely have to agree to disagree. One thing that is certainly more proximate to the current events than the school issue, which is down the line, the VFW debate. In terms of the ballot question, that ultimately there was a petition drive, the council did not proceed on it. They got some advice from the municipal attorney that it was not something you could put on the ballot. Even now we're hearing rumblings about possibly a lawsuit that might challenge that and put this on the ballot. I don't know whether or not that's been filed or not. But maybe if you could both explain your positions on this issue and perhaps tie it into the broader discussion of sewers. Mayor?
Sure. I've been very clear about it. 1, Vernon Township MUA, which is the governing organization, the authority, has done absolutely everything to see to it that the burden of the VFW in terms of the hookup fees for sewerage have been lightened. As a matter of fact, they've given them every extension of time that they've asked for at no penalty. And recently, as a matter of fact, the last meeting granted to the VFW a payment plan, which hardship payment plan, which has been available to others who have used it to hook up to the sewer. Now, in terms of this petition, I'm not a lawyer, but when the council asked, I didn't ask, but when the council asked Mr. Urson about the ability for the council to pass an ordinance, his answer was that it fails on its face. And then he went on to explain that what that means is that the statutes as written and the case law as tested is very clear that a municipal utility authority cannot be directed by a governing body. As a matter of fact, that's why they were set up initially, to remove that authority from the political process. That being the case, it would be very, very hard for someone to go against the advice of council. Yet 2 of the council people did that and voted to put it on the ballot. I hear the same rumblings you do, and I have no idea what the judge is going to do or what the lawyers are going to do at this point in time. Let the process work its way through. What's really happened in the meantime is what I believe should have happened right from the start. The people of Vernon are banding together, and they're raising money to help the VFW pay its fees. I know that they had a fundraiser not too long ago that raised $2,300. I am told that there has been a benefactor that has made a donation of $14,000 anonymously at this point in time. The point of the matter is, Vernon, as they always do, whether it's the VFW or whether it's any other need in the community, if the people believe in it, they rally and they do what they need to do. As far as the rest of it, from my vantage point, it looked like a really smooth political ploy.
Okay. Mr. Martinsen, your thoughts?
I think you can't put on the ballot to save the VFW in that way, to raise money for it. I do think that we need to do stuff for it, which we have been, as the mayor mentioned. In fact, this weekend we're going to have another fundraiser. We have a festival. We've had it for the last 3 years. All 3 years we raise money for the VFW and for the Veteran Cemetery as well. I personally walked to all the banks and talked to the banks and said, okay, what do you need from the VFW? And they said, all you need is a letter on their letterhead, and they would give. So I think the town can do a lot, and some of us have been doing it, and that would be the answer.
It's nice to agree.
And I guess there's a bigger issue in that there are properties that have grappled with the cost of the sewer hookups, and there's the low-interest loan program and some others. Going forward, do you see any changes that you might recommend that the MUA would consider that might improve the situation for some of those, like the VFW, who've had some hardship issues?
Yeah, unfortunately, we lost the redevelopment zone in the town center that could possibly be gotten back. You said it was, and then it wasn't. And if we had that, you can get grants for nonprofits. So the churches could have got money, the VFW could have got money to help with them, and that is one big avenue we could use. The other avenue is to change the system that we're using for the MUA. And he, if he stays in, couldn't do that. I mean, we can't tell him, you got to change the system. But we certainly can present the information to them, as I have in the past.
Well, first of all, the situation about the town center, when I went in, the town center was still in a situation where it could have been, the application could have been completed with the DCA and turned it into a redevelopment zone.
I know, I told you.
I'm well aware, okay? However, the fact of the matter was that that was the same case in McAfee. My feeling was very simple, and one of the reasons that I did not recommend to the council to pursue it. Vernon Township had invested literally millions of dollars in the new Main Street, in the sewer, in the pipes, in the curbing, and all the amenities that Vernon Township taxpayers paid to bring that town center to where it is. I felt that the taxpayers had paid enough to do that, and that the people, the business interests that would locate there, because remember, it's the only area in Vernon Township where mixed development, that is residential and commercial, can exist in the same building. And so as a result, the economic incentive for people to develop in that town center was there. And to further declare it a redevelopment zone, when in fact it wasn't that at all, it was a brand new town center that was being built up. I think McAfee's a little bit different. The McAfee area, I wouldn't be surprised if we do in the future pursue including that in a redevelopment zone, and that has more to do with the Legends Hotel and the need to address that problem.
One thing I want to follow, both of you have, as part of your campaigns, I mean, you've had a show at one point, Mr. Martinsen, Mayor, of course, your show has gotten a lot of attention, and it's raised some interesting issues of things you've said in the shows that maybe we could expand on a bit. And when I saw one of the things on your website, and it mentioned something about you want to end the ratables madness. Correct. And maybe you could expand a bit what you were talking about there in terms of how what you see as perhaps the concern now and how you would proceed differently as mayor.
Well, I think we've had the same situation over and over again. You know, the shiny bauble is held in front of us, and this is going to solve all your tax problems. As a kid, I was in the Playboy Club. It was phenomenal. They had arcade games all over the place. You know, you could spend too much money of your allowance there. It was packed all the time, and then over time, especially during the week and in the off season, there was nobody there. There was less games, less games, and then we got Legends. We've had the same thing with Interwest. That was going to be this giant thing, and it went away. The town center was going to be something great, and it went away. I think what we need to concentrate on before we're worried about going and getting the new buildings, it's kind of like you're going to go out and buy a new car because all of your old cars are broken down. Mm-hmm. Well, we need to get the areas of town that are emptied out now. We have tons of stores up in the A&P Mall. We've got the stores underneath the Appalachian. We've got properties all over town that don't have anything in them. And we need to do something with that.
So in terms of the town center then, what your strategy would be a little different than the mayor's?
Yes, and I think one of the issues we have is, and that's hurt a lot of the people with the MUA, is all of that property, empty property, doesn't pay a dime towards the sewers. And so everyone else has to make up for it. Yet those sewers and that Main Street, as he mentioned, were all put in so people would build, and they haven't. Okay, so I would suggest possibly that we incorporate some kind of a tariff on them until, and you can do that, they build to help counter and the loss of value now.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Mayor?
A couple of things. Number one, what you just alluded to is what the connection fee is about. The connection fee is, in fact, levied to offset the capital improvements necessary to bring sewerage to a given property. Secondly, you mentioned the A&P. The A&P shopping center is empty not because there's not business developing in Vernon. The A&P shopping center is empty because they charge $35 a square foot to rent their space. And the market in Vernon right now for commercial space is $12 to $13 a square foot. So as long as the ownership there continues to do their business that way, which is their prerogative, okay, I'd like to know what you suggest the town should do. I really do. Should we go in there and tell them to lower the rent?
Yeah.
Do you think they're going to do it?
I think we need to talk to them and explain to them that it's going to make more sense for our town and for them, and they need to be part of the solution and not part of the problem.
Well, that's all well and good, but obviously they've been talked to more than once, not only by myself, but by previous administrations. They choose to do business that way. That's their right, okay? The other places that you mentioned was the Appalachian. Do you know why there's nothing in the bottom of the Appalachian? Mm-hmm. Why?
It was poorly designed.
That is exactly correct. And the new owners, okay, have plans to make that a viable economic entity as they develop the resort. The fact of the matter is, again, not that the marketplace isn't there, okay? Not that there isn't business developing in Vernon. I have clipped ribbons in the last 4 years on over 30 new businesses that have opened in Vernon, while all I hear at the council meeting is, oh, there's empty stores, there's this, there's that.
Did any close?
Which ones?
Did any close?
I'm thinking of the ones that of the new ones that we started?
And or that were in town already?
I'm sure there probably were, but I can't think of them off the top of my head. Which ones would you say?
I'm just asking you the question.
I'm asking you.
I'm asking you if you're mentioning all the ones that opened, so I'm asking if you knew of any that closed.
I can't think of one. Can you?
Yeah, Flying Monkey.
Who's now reopened down on
Finally,
on Lake
somewhere
Walkill
else.
Road.
Yeah.
But that had to do with health department regulations. Where else?
Right now, it looks like the Snap Fitness is closing.
It looks like.
And, well, I mean, it's for rent property.
Well, maybe this kind of leads into, I think, a broader discussion in terms of where do you see Vernon in 10 years, in 20 years? Where do you see the population? Where do you see the level of business? What evolutions do you see in the business patterns and perhaps the residential patterns? And what can the mayor, who's going to be starting January 1st, do to influence and shape this process?
Okay.
Yeah.
In the past, and this is part of the Ratables Madness thingy, we've always concentrated on one, or it seems that one area has been concentrated on. What I'd like to see is the township as a whole growing together. For instance, the farms and become part of the, what's it called? A sustainable growth of the entire community, so that farms become part of the growth. Yes, the resort becomes part of the growth. Small businesses become part of the growth, and by getting all of those groups to work together to promote the town as a whole. One of the things I also saw that I think we made a mistake with, or that the developers have made a mistake with, they're always going on the people coming up for the weekend. And I think that's the wrong approach, but that's their decision. As
You're talking about the ecotourism and
yes.
agritourism. You don't see that as viable necessarily?
I see it as viable, but not as just plopped at the resort, which is what it's been for all those years. It needs to be, we need to have the farms be part of it, growing organic stuff, selling organic stuff, the meats and vegetables. Then you have your restaurants that are feeding off of that, and you can sell all of that as part of it. One of the things I would do is legends, and one of the big areas to me was mentioned recently how the septic systems that we have in our town have become a problem, and they will be, and they're old and stuff like that. Yeah, that's true. But there's an opportunity for us to work with Rutgers, and I think we could work with Rutgers on a lot of other things, to create the latest technology and become a birthplace for people from around the world to come into Vernon and see what can be done.
Just before going over to the mayor on this one, so it's 20 years from now, where do you see the population? Where do you see the primary business area being in Vernon in terms of?
The primary business area.
In terms of what kind of businesses that you see Vernon having, and how many people do you think are living here? And are they mostly older, as some have speculated? Is there going to be younger families?
Well, that's part of the issue, or part of the situation with the schools, is the fact that we're nearing this point in the growth of the town where we have an aging population. That should be a bonus in a way, and that would be part of what I would see is you make Vernon, or we make Vernon, a township that's very senior friendly, that is a place where they would want to live and stay and can afford to live and stay, that the businesses are likewise associated for them. You can have medical that helps for that. There's a whole plethora of things that could be done.
Mayor?
If the current trends continue, Vernon Township will have a smaller population and it will be much older. The average population, or the average age of the population in the state of New Jersey right now is about 39.2 years, if I remember correctly. We are at 43.4, and that gap is growing. If we're getting older, that would tend to mean that there are a lot of seniors who are still sticking around. And one of the things that I have done during my 4 years as mayor is to visit with all of the senior groups and speak to them and listen to them. And as you well know, we initiated a senior housing project, which we hoped was going to have affordable rents for seniors. Vernon Township approved everything that needed to be done, and the application was sent to the cost of Affordable Housing Council in 2012, and there it has sat for 3, now going on 4 years, never even touched. And so as a result, many of the partners in that particular enterprise are now looking at it and saying, well, you know, there's no rental available in Vernon. If you've checked the markets, there's less than 10 single-family homes available for rent in Vernon right now as I talk to you. And the number of apartments that are available for rent are also at a premium. There are still some condominiums that are available in the Great Gorge Village, some of them at a reduced rate because of reasons that have to do with the market and the condition of those things. But in total, because of the Great Recession and the change in the banking laws, people who could previously qualify to buy a home no longer do. And so they're looking for rent. That marketplace is emerging, and the fact of the matter is, with the Highlands and the preservation zone that we have, the likelihood of building any more single-family houses of any great number is slim and none. In the 40-plus years I've been the mayor, we've built 12 new homes in Vernon. In 1986, when I was the mayor, we built 400 new homes that year. That'll give you some idea. As far as the ratable chase goes, I want to address that.
Right.
We have experienced a loss in assessed value in Vernon Township since 2008 of $600 million. Now, what does that have to do with what I'm talking about? Well, it's real simple. It's that assessed value that sets the tax rate that the people have to pay that live and work and own property in Vernon Township. And so, if we cannot build houses, and I can tell you candidly, in the 80s when I was on the town committee, taxation was not a problem because there were so many houses being built that there was more money coming in than, in all honesty, we needed. But it was. That's not the case anymore. And it won't be the case anymore. So what alternative do we have to offset that loss in value, the increase in cost of doing business of the government, if in fact we don't make Vernon an attractive place for people businesses to invest? The sewers and the water that were put into Vernon starting in 2000, at a time when I was not involved in politics, and I've heard all the criticisms and the like, I want to thank those people for having foresight. Because with the state law, what it was, and the advent of the Highlands Act, had the town council in 2000 not started Vision 2000 and the entire process with all its fits and starts and problems and costs, we would not be where we are today. And where we are today is, during that lost value that I talked about, over the 4 years that I've been the mayor, we've actually experienced almost $40 million in new commercial construction in Vernon Township. Now, 40 million doesn't make up 600 million. I understand that. But every bit of commercial development not only addresses the property tax, it addresses jobs, it addresses the economy. And it's the flow of money through the economy that keeps America moving. And so the issue of the weekend visitor or the issue of the tourists that come to Vernon, right now we have 1 million visitors a year. And as I travel around and I stop in the gas stations and the delis and the restaurants and I talk to people, here's what I hear. When the ski area is open, I'm busy.
Not my place.
When Action Park is open, I'm busy. Are you ever busy?
Yes.
When Action Park is open, I'm busy. On the shoulder seasons, it's slow. I'm sure that you are aware because you covered it, and I think you are too, Gary. Vernon Township was recognized by the State Department of Tourism and has had the Route 515 route through Vernon, across Maple Grange Road, up 517, Sand Hill Road, and back to 94 as the 8th scenic byway in New Jersey.
On that point, though, I mean, tangibly, what does that mean?
It means we're going to see another 1 million visitors to Vernon a year in the next 5 to 10 years.
1 million people will be drawn simply by that designation.
And it's the ecotourism that attracts them. I heard Gary say about the farmers, you know, doing all these things. It's happening already. Go to the Vernon Valley Farm. Go to Pochuck Farm. Go to Heaven Hill Farm.
Well, he just asked me where I envisioned it in the future, and that's what I envision.
Well, but what I'm saying to you is it's already begun to happen.
And we can build houses.
How many?
At least 300.
How many?
At least 300 units.
Really?
Yes.
And based on what?
Based on the fact that when the redevelopment zones were made, one of the stipulations was that we allow them to have full-time housing, and we gave it to them. And that whole second redevelopment zone is out of the Highlands area, and they can build houses.
It's in the planning. It's in the planning area, and unfortunately, in this particular case, you don't have all the information. The planning area, you don't. The planning area has the same restriction on septage as the preservation area. Okay, here's a question for you. If you build a 4-bedroom house, either in the planning or the preservation area, how many micrograms of phosphates are going to go into the septic system? Do you know?
It's going to be on sewers.
No.
Yes, it's going to be on sewers. Those are in the sewer area.
No. The redevelopment zone in McAfee is not going to be on sewers.
Why not?
Because there isn't sewage there.
The pipes don't go through there?
It's not the pipes going through there. It's the New Jersey DEP sewer service area.
And yet we have people that are saying that we're going to expand the sewer service area to 3 other spots in the town. So
it's being looked at because of sewer failure.
So then it could be done.
Because of septic failure. The point of the matter I'm making to you is this. If a household puts 10 micrograms of phosphate into a septic system, they need a minimum of 12.5 acres to build on.
Not true.
That is true.
There's new
read
systems, and that's
the
what I
law.
was talking about before. We can be part of the solution and come up with these brand new systems like they've done up in the New England area, and you become world class, and these are things third world countries want and stuff. So we can have stuff for Rutgers that creates
It's a great idea.
the new science.
How are you going to do that?
I'm
What
gonna
are
work
you
with
going to do
Rutgers.
specifically? You're going to work with Rutgers?
Yep.
You're going to bring them up here?
Yep.
You're
And I'm
going to
work,
govern?
and that would give all of
They'll
a
be
lot.
your consultants?
No, I said I'm going to work with them.
I just was
I didn't
wondering
say they
how
were
you were
gonna be
going
my
to do it.
consultants.
Specifically, what are you going to do?
I can't say for sure.
Ah,
Can you?
yeah, I definitely can. I can tell you what I've done, and I can tell you what I'm going to do, and I can tell you basically where it's going to result, okay? And that's the difference between my candidacy and yours.
Not true.
Well, to follow up on, kind of related to that, when you go to the council meetings, it is evident that there are some divisions in Vernon amongst those that are active in government. Whoever is elected mayor is going to be grappling with, with those same divisions, just perhaps on different sides or how things play out. I know, Ms. Martinsen, you've certainly been critical of Vernon Vibes being on the town website. Mayor, you've defended it.
Just the link.
How do the link rather? How do you both see about building bridges, if elected January 1st, to those who perhaps opposed you in the election?
You know, it's a great question, and I would say I've got a track record for that. Actually, in 2011, when I ran, there were many, many people who were in fact supporters of my opponent, Mrs. Rinker. They included Mrs. Palladini, they included Mrs. Buds, they included people who were working to help Mrs. Rinker succeed when she was the mayor. On the other side, there was the former, I would say, maven of the Republican Party, Bunny Kukula, who was working on behalf of Harry Shortway at that time. I reached out to every single group upon my election, including appointing Mrs. Visciconti to the Recreation Committee, Mrs. Rubin to the Recreation Committee. As a matter of fact, I made appointments of all of the people who were adversarial to me on boards and commissions. And to be frank with you, those people, within 3 months of their appointment, resigned. Why? Why? It was an opportunity for them to impact. But no, they chose a different route. And that route was, we're not going to talk to the mayor. We're simply going to talk to him at public meetings. That's fine. We did that. We did that for most of the 4 years until that conversation, led by now Councilwoman Jean Murphy, became sarcastic and snarky. I haven't gone to the meetings for a very simple reason. I'm not going to argue with her. I'm not going to argue with anybody. I make my statements, I do my job, I make my reports, and the council gets to vote on them. And at this point in time, it's resulted in, I think, great progress for Vernon Township.
If re-elected, though, and granted you're not required to be at the meetings by statute,
Yep.
but do you intend to return to the meetings?
I have when it's important. I'm there when there is an issue that the mayor needs to report to or discuss with the council. I've done it. You know I have.
But there could be issues where a member of the public might raise something that was not on the radar screen until that meeting that you wouldn't know until you're there, I guess.
Well, again, a well-run council will take that under advisement and deal with it at a future meeting when in fact it can be part of the agenda and the discussion rather than a free-for-all from the floor during public comment.
Okay, Mr. Martinsen?
Well, over the last 8 years, I've been attending the council meetings, and I've been called, you hate this person, and then they get in, and, well, you hate that person, you get in, and then you hate that person. I don't hate anybody, and I'm very amiable to everybody. And I've always worked through things. I mentioned before, Mr. Kadish, the one council meeting, I disagreed with all 5 of them, and I told them so. And during that council meeting, I got some feedback instantly, almost. And right afterwards, I just, we shook hands, we laughed about it and stuff like that. I'm the kind of person that will do that. I have no problem. We've been amiable, I think.
Absolutely.
And even though we disagree tremendously sometimes.
I have no personal animosity toward you at all, none.
So one thing I was wondering then, is there a policy initiative that the mayor has done or something he has talked about doing that you would reverse or seek to reverse if you could upon becoming mayor?
A policy decision. Well, the one thing that I was very upset about, and was Camp Sussex. Of course, that's not a policy decision, but
Or priority or anything, yeah.
Yeah, investigation, and it could still become something again. So that would be one thing. But is that what you're looking for?
Oh, yes, and Mayor, if reelected, is there some bold new initiatives perhaps that you haven't talked about yet that you're looking to do in your first year or second year back on the job?
No, I intend to continue the agenda that we have laid out. At this point in time, we have water to 40% of the town center, central water provided by United Water. The next step in extending that wherever the sewer lines are requires the United Water to get BPU approval, which they have begun that process. At that point in time, there may be the need for Vernon Township to make bonded money available that gets paid back in the same way the sewer does. I'm not sure how that's going to work, but it's my objective to have water wherever there are sewer lines in the town center by the end of my second term, earlier if at all possible. But you have to recognize that we're dealing with state agencies and a whole myriad of other issues that have to be dealt with and then move forward.
Yeah, since we only have about 4 minutes or so to go, I wanted to kind of maybe wrap up on a lighter note. You know, there's so many wonderful things about Vernon. Certainly, just driving through in the fall, it's very evident. If you were talking to somebody who's never been to Vernon, who's maybe looking to move, and you wanted them to consider Vernon, how would you make that sale? What would you emphasize in terms of what do you love about Vernon the most?
Well, it has a lot of different things that you can do. I mean, there's recreation. There's if you're a skier and stuff, you can do that. But we have the farms. We have small businesses. It's a really community hometown. It's a large area. We have a great park. We have a couple nice parks. I've always loved it because it's the little rural town that still exists in the conglomeration that's New Jersey. And when I see some people come up, they say, "This is great, you know, I can get away from the city and this would be a great place to live." And they have that same feeling, you know, that small town, and that's why I'd hate to see it get too crazy growth.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, about a minute and a half or so.
I can do it. First thing I'd tell the people is if you want to live in a community where the people themselves are strong and compassionate and care about each other, Vernon's a good place to live. We've touched on a lot of issues here today, and every single one of them has a component of our people. Yeah, I know that there are people who disagree and there are people that naysay and all the rest, but when shove comes to tug and there's a real problem or a family in need, the Vernon residents come together and they help their neighbors. Secondly, I would tell them that I'd ask them if they could name one community within 50 miles of Times Square that offers the amenities that Vernon Township has to offer. Yeah, we all know about Mountain Creek and we all know about the resorts, but we have miles and miles of fishable streams and lakes. We have some of them, as you said, Rob, some of the most beautiful vistas and country that you will find anywhere. And in addition to that, we have the farms, which now have latched on to the value of ecotourism. The Appalachian Trail, which goes through Vernon Township, has some beautiful, beautiful spots, some of the most beautiful photography I've ever seen. And lastly, what I would say is we are a town that's on the move. We recognize that it's not going to be easy to overcome the obstacles that have been placed in front of us by the economy, by the marketplace, by the dislocation of the millenniums into the more densely populated areas, by the state laws that have been engendered. Looking at all of that, it would be easy to say, oh my God, what's the future look like? I think the future's bright. And I think it's bright because we have set a path and we have made it clear that we are going to do everything that we can to make Vernon Township viable and a place where you want to raise your family. And lastly, despite all of the consternation about comments I've made concerning Vernon schools, they're still, in my opinion, the best in Sussex County. Yeah.
All right, well, thank you, Mayor Marotta, and again, Mr. Gary Martinsen for taking the time to be here.
New Jersey Herald for having us.
Yes, and thank you. And our third candidate, Harry Shortway, declined to be here tonight. This will be available for rebroadcast on the New Jersey Herald website, www.njherald.com. also available on EDTV 20. Again, thanks to our friends at the Community College for making the studio available and this opportunity. Election is coming up on November 3rd, and Vernon has probably one of the more interesting races in the county. So we appreciate everybody for taking the time to watch this, whether you're in Vernon or anywhere else.
Good luck.
Again, thanks very much to both of you, and I appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks, you, Rob.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.